You are Locked On Wolverines POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Detroit on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, now that's a dominating victory. Welcome one, welcome all. It's live, Locked On Wolverines postcast. I am your host, Jake Rietma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Rietma. Michigan dominates from start to finish in this one, 50-6, the final over Northwestern. Wolverines are now bowl eligible at 6-5 on the season. We're going to go over the big day on the ground for Kalel Mullings and the entire Michigan Wolverines team, for that matter. Just a complete effort today. And now we can officially turn the page and look ahead to Ohio State. And as always, we'll have your thoughts as well. That's all coming up next on a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. And as always, we thank you for making the Locked On Wolverines postcast your post-game destination. Following the final whistle, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, on YouTube, it's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. Hey, how about a huge shout out for today's presenting sponsor, making the Locked On Wolverines postcast possible, FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also, shout out to Isaiah Hull on Locked On Wolverines. What a fun week it was for the Wolverines. My goodness, you talk about a week to remember. And yes, this season hasn't been what Wolverines fans had hoped for in a lot of different ways. But as the pendulum starts to swing back to what this team can be and hopefully back to national dominance, you'll look at this week with flipping Bryce Underwood and then a convincing win at home, hopefully springboarding this Michigan Wolverines team moving forward. But as always, we'll take your comments in just a moment. So whatever comes to mind, I want to break this one down. So feel free to use that chat function. That's the beauty of the live Locked On Wolverines postcast. But you look at where this game turned, 50-6. Now, obviously, say what you will about Northwestern, just not a formidable opponent today. They fall to 4-6 on the season. My apologies, 4-7 on the season, 2-6 in the conference under David Brown. And I think that team will start to turn it around, and obviously everything that they went through with losing or choosing to fire Pat Fitzgerald, and we don't need to dive into all that as a Locked On Wolverines postcast here. But Northwestern always been the disciplined, well-coached team, and I think they'll get back to that. Maybe not the representing the Big Ten in the title game like they did in 2020. But that being said, how about the Wolverines just taking this game at the end of the second quarter with the scoring drive, and then the first drive after halftime in the third quarter is where this game really flipped. Because first half, and that's, I don't even think it was necessarily as close as the score may have projected in that early portion of the contest. But, Northwestern gets a turnover. They start to feel a little bit, I don't want to say confident about themselves, but instead of it being, a blowout at the beginning of the game, Northwestern does kick 2 field goals, and you're looking at a 17-6 game going into half. And with that late score, when Northwestern made it 10-6, you're thinking, okay, maybe this could be a more difficult game than what we're looking at. But that certainly was not the case with the way the Wolverines ended that second quarter with that decisive 11-play drive, 65 yards, all culminating with that Davis Warren pass to, I believe it was to Colston Loveland for the touchdown. And the Wolverines were off. Yes, it was an 8-yard pass to Colston Loveland for the touchdown. And the Wolverines close the second quarter with a touchdown drive and then start the third quarter with the touchdown drive. And that's where this one just really went to the side of the Michigan Wolverines in terms of it becoming almost a blowout in that third quarter. And then we know exactly what happened the rest of the game. I should say early in that third quarter when Michigan went up with that touchdown after the first drive of the third quarter, you knew that this was a lock. But after that, I mean, the dominance of the rushing attack, I mentioned Kalel Mullings in the opening, but how about just the entire team as far as the way they dominated the trenches. You got to give some love to the defense. I mean, my goodness. And I know Tim Brando mentioned this on the call with Devin Gardner, of course, former Michigan Wolverine himself, on the call for FS1. But the way college football chooses to use the rushing yards, sacks count as negative rushing yards as opposed to negative passing yards like they do in the NFL. And for the vast majority of this game, Northwestern was in danger of having negative rushing yards. That's how good this Michigan team. Final stats, that's how good the Michigan defense was. The final stats, Michigan 201 yard on the ground, and Northwestern with 10 yards rushing in 25 attempts. So better than 5 yards a carry for Michigan on 35 carries for 201 yards, and 0.4 yards per carry for Northwestern. It's a clean game as well, just the one penalty from Michigan, and it was the after the last touchdown in basically garbage time, where the game was well in the balance. You had a personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct call, and you saw Sharon Moore getting a little upset. That is if you were still watching, which if you've turned to a different game by that point, I certainly don't blame you. But convincing win. Davis Warren was much better today. He did have the one interception, but overall 26 of 35, 195 yards, and the one touchdown right before half with Colston Loveland making that reception for a touchdown. Colston Loveland becomes the Michigan tight end with the most receiving receptions in Michigan history. And I know the tight end position label is a little bit, it is what it is. He's used as a wide receiver, but a record breaker there for Colston Loveland, which in the midst of this season, it's been what it has, but hey, you'll take that for his fine career as a Michigan Wolverine. But all in all, this is what you wanted to see. This is what the type of team you expected to see. And yes, an inferior opponent, but dominating defense, a physical attack on offense, and just controlling the game from start to finish. And again, there's a lot of different instances where you can point to and say, this is why Michigan was so much better than Northwestern, and this is what they needed to do, and so on and so forth. But it comes down to execution, and depending on the opponent for Michigan this year, they just haven't been able to do that on a consistent level. But this afternoon at the Big House, it was fun to watch, and it was one of those games you kick your feet up. It's been well decided in the third quarter, and you enjoy the cruise control victory. Let's take some of those comments for everybody tuning in on the live Locked On Wolverines postcast. Again, the Michigan Wolverines bowl eligible. Took longer than many had expected entering this season, but in the end, it is Wolverines go to 6-5 and are in fact bowl eligible. First comment of the day, we've got Dennis tuning in saying, "Go Wolverines!" Absolutely, and this again was the type of week, I should say, that you can point to. And it depending on how things go next year, which we can all agree we're very, very optimistic with, not only just because of Bryce Underwood, but just with the direction of the program towards the latter portion of the season, that you can start to get really, really excited about the momentum that's building. Daniel Barry Sports Highlights checking in with the Demetrius McNeil up next. Now that Michigan is bowl eligible, the countdown to the game 1 week from today. Perfect segue. That's what we're going to talk about next. A countdown to the game. Michigan taking on Ohio State, who is obviously victorious today. We'll discuss that. We'll also continue to break this one down and look around. The rest of it is just an absolute circus right now at Arizona State. They thought they won the game, and the whole crowd just rushed the field. But I think they're putting more time back on the clock. Not that this is a live Locked On Arizona State podcast, but my goodness, it's just pandemonium right now at Sun Devil Stadium, trying to get the people off the field. Denny Dillingham just going nuts. That's what we love about college football, just absolute chaos. I think that's what we're going to see with the college football playoff as well. One of the goalposts is broken. The fans started to tear the goalpost down. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is just a wild scene in Tempe right now, if anybody else is tuned into that. But appreciate everybody tuning in. It's a live Locked On Wolverines postcast after a 50-6 victory over the Northwestern Wildcats. Convincing fashion. The Wolverines are bowl eligible, 6-5. We will look ahead to that game against Ohio State next on a Locked On Wolverines postcast. Hey, this episode of the Locked On Wolverines postcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. That's right. The most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports is on Prize Picks. Over 50 million members. That's right. And over 10 million members and millions of dollars awarded in Prize Picks. It's made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you do is pick more or less on at least two players, and your shot to win up to 100 times your cash back. Voila, look at that. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Listen up, I use Prize Picks all the time. Pick more or less makes the game add a little more sizzle to your viewing experience. What I also love about Prize Picks, it's the best place to get real money and sports action. Over 10 million users sign up today. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as little as 15 minutes. And oh yeah, Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits, withdrawals in your account this season. Don't forget that Prize Picks puts their members first with the insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured or if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return. Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. All right. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, you look ahead to the game, you can leave it at that, against Ohio State in Columbus. And Ohio State made quite the statement today with the win over Indiana in convincing fashion. And it's with obviously with the shot at the Big Ten title, or you want to spoil Ohio State's shot at the Big Ten title game. You want to spoil. Oh, I still think even if Ohio State loses as a 2-loss team, if they go on. And obviously, if they go on and win the Big Ten, they'll be in. But it's going to be hard to keep them out of the playoffs. But I think with this 12-team playoff format that we currently have, there's so much of a conversation to be had about what the back end of the committee, or what the committee will do with the back end of that 12-team field. That being said, that's all down the road, a lot of minutia, and a lot of it's going to play itself out. And you look at this game where Michigan can be successful, I think it starts on the defensive end. And Indiana, in as little success as they had against Ohio State today, I will say, watching that game, in the early portion of the game, they had some success both defensively and offensively. They went up 7-0, and it's the old cliche, but a ball control style offense. And Indiana didn't necessarily do this, but I'm saying Michigan could have success on the ground, continuing to pound it on the ground the way that they did against Northwestern today. Obviously, it would be a much more difficult task to be able to do that against a great defense like Ohio State, and so on and so forth. And we all know about the weapons that they have, but my goodness, what a way for Sharon Moore and the rest of this staff to right the ship and to essentially, I don't want to say, all is solved if you beat Ohio State, but my goodness, that would go a long, long way in looking back at the 2024 season and say, okay, you beat Ohio State, you keep that streak alive, and things are moving in the right direction to get back to that national dominance that this Michigan team had 1 year ago. So it's going to be a tough task. It's going to be a lot of things. It's going to be chippy. It's going to be everything that makes this the best rivalry in college football. And I think I speak for many when I say that is something that, man, you're even a week out, the hair on the back of your neck starts to stand up a little bit. You start to get the goosebumps. You start to feel it. And even if you're severe underdogs in this game, which I haven't checked yet for what that initial opening spread is, but obviously Michigan's going to be a pretty big underdog in this one. That's why crazier things happen in a rivalry game. All the cliches, throw the record books out when these two teams get together and so on and so forth. But there's an element of this could be the case. There very much could be, crazier things have happened, that sort of thing, as far as Michigan winning this game. And right now, 23.5-point favorites for Ohio State. That on the Action Network. So, or I'm sorry, on on3.com. So yeah, obviously Ohio State's going to be the heavy favorite in this one, but listen, I don't think you write Michigan off. They're going to have to play their best game. They're going to have to keep Ohio State's offense off the field. They're going to have to play ball control. They're going to have to get some turnovers, and maybe even make some plays on special teams. You saw that today from Ohio State, that a punt return for a touchdown in games like that can be the difference. So looking forward to that one. Cannot wait to dive into it a little bit more and just see what Michigan can do to perhaps really make their season and spoil Ohio State's chance at a Big Ten title. All right, we are going to tie a bow on this one with our final thoughts and go ahead and look back on the season and look ahead to the final game that Michigan has against Ohio State and continue to cruise along on this live Locked On Wolverines postcast. Hey, this episode of the Locked On Wolverines postcast is brought to you by Z-Biotics, pre-alcohol probiotic drink. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. So here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, that gets converted into a toxic byproduct right in the gut. This byproduct is what causes the dehydration to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down, because that's the key. It's the byproduct that causes the hangover the next day. So just remember, make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Also, remember, drink responsibly, hydrate as you're going, mix in a water, and you'll feel your best the next day. No need to waste an entire day being hungover, being down and out, and that sort of thing. That's where the Z-Biotics pre-alcohol comes in as the probiotic drink, world's first genetically engineered probiotic, invented by PhD scientists. And here's the steps to take. You drink pre-alcohol as your first drink. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. You drink responsibly, and then you enjoy the next day. That's all you got to do. And my goodness, it is what it's all about, to feel your best the next day. So go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head up to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. This episode of the Locked On Wolverines postcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. America's number one sportsbook has you covered, my friends. FanDuel, get ready to tackle NFL action with America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page that you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It's a Locked On Wolverines postcast. Appreciate you spending your postgame with me on Locked On Sports Detroit. We'll have a Locked On Lions postcast tomorrow following the game against the Detroit Lions taking on the Indianapolis Colts. And then, of course, our Locked On Pistons postcast coming later tonight as the Pistons are back in action. So it's a busy time on the channel, Locked On Sports Detroit. And so I appreciate any anyone that wants to check out the channel and subscribe, we appreciate your support on that. Free and available, of course. And you know what? It's real simple. This is Locked On Sports Detroit. We cover all the postcasts for your immediate reaction show. Just like this one where Michigan beat the Northwestern Wildcats, beat the brakes off of them 50-6, outscoring. This is really impressive. Outscoring Northwestern 33-0 in that second half. Because again, it was a 10-6 ball game. And with the way the Wolverines closed out the second quarter with the touchdown, started the third quarter with the touchdown, that's where this game really swung. I also thought Michigan was so good on third down. They were 11-16. That's an area that they had struggled prior to this game. They had really struggled on third down. They were really good there. 5 for 5 in the red zone as well. So you think you take those building blocks, bring them into next week against Ohio State, or the week of practice. Not that Michigan needs any extra motivation. I'm certainly not suggesting that, because we all know 365 days a year, the thought is to beat Ohio State. It's always on your mind. Beat Ohio State. Beat Ohio State. And this week is where it all heightens in terms of the week of preparation. But we all know the preparation has been going on and on. Also saw some photos of Connor Stallion and Bryce Underwood surfacing at the game today. So all the more reason for celebration if you're a Michigan Wolverines fan with the week that it was, flipping Bryce Underwood from LSU to the University of Michigan. You got your quarterback of the future, and that future can and again, not that we're living in the future by any means and looking past what's happening for the remainder of 2024, but for all the things that could have happened this week, I think it was a week of all good news for the Michigan Wolverines. That being said, one more, it could become an even better 2-week span here for the Wolverines if they are able to beat the Ohio State Buckeyes. And that game tomorrow, next Saturday, November 30th, against Ohio State in Columbus at the Horseshoe. Of course, we'll have a live Locked On Wolverines reaction show to that one. We've got a Locked On Lions postcast tomorrow, Locked On Pistons postcast later tonight. Your post-game destination is right here. Don't forget to check out Locked On Wolverines on the daily with Isaiah Hole. What a tremendous following he has and audience that he's built up. Shout out to him. And all the latest on the Maize and Blue, he's got you covered. Also, worth pointing out that this being your first listen following the final whistle, don't forget to check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast for your second listen. That's right. Craig Sheeman puts the Big Ten first when everyone else overlooks it. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Locked On Wolverines postcast. It's always a pleasure to be on the air with you. Michigan beats Northwestern 50-6, a dominating performance from the Wolverines. Kalel Mullings, my player of the game, 92 yards, 3 touchdowns receiving. You had a couple of nice efforts. Obviously, Colston Loveland gets the touchdown, but Tyler Morris is leading the way with 7 receptions, 64 yards. You love to see that from him, but it was on the ground. Donovan Edwards, give him his flowers as well, 65 yards on just 10 carries. He had a touchdown as well, that 24-yard rushing touchdown for a score. So that being said, you feel like this game checked a lot of boxes. The defense was really, really good, and you add it all up, and it's a 50-6 convincing win over the Northwestern Wildcats. Michigan is 6-5. They're going to a bowl game, but more work to be done, and that starts against the bitter rival in the game next Saturday against Ohio State. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your evening. Make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Sports Detroit, and we'll see you in just a little bit for a Locked On Pistons postcast, all here on Locked On Sports Detroit. See you next time on the Locked On Wolverines postcast.